All right. Hello, everyone who joined this webinar or who is going to watch us later. Welcome to Hiring for the Future, Building and Leading AI-Driven Teams webinar, the first session from Be Agile. And it's a brand new series on one of the most urgent but misunderstood topic of our time. So again, how artificial intelligence is reshaping the way we hire, build, and lead teams. And it's not going to be about theory. It's all about what is actually happening in companies today. The real decisions leaders are making, the new roles emerging, and the hard lessons from hiring in a world that's moving faster than ever. And at Be Agile, we believe in bringing complexity and putting it into clarity. So in the series like this, we are cutting through the noise we keep hearing from everywhere. And you will hear hands-on advice, use cases, scenarios, and also bold insights from those already leading AI integrated teams. And if you're a decision maker, HR leader, or just someone who wants to stay ahead of the curve, this is where you need to be. So welcome again. And today our guest is Gerard. Welcome, Gerard. And Gerard, if you don't mind starting sharing your screen and maybe introduce yourself, and let's get started.
Sure. Thank you very much. Gerard, I am a product manager and executive coach at Golden Point Solutions. And today I would like to provide a little bit more insights into how to hire new employees in the era of AI. And I will share my screen to share a little presentation with you.
Yep,
I hope you can see the slides.
Yes, perfect.
Okay, let's go to the quick agenda overview. So we're going to focus on hiring, and I have a few use cases that I would like to discuss maybe in a Q&A session, and I will have some bonus takeouts for everyone at the end. I think we already went through the introduction, so I'll simply go to the next one. If you're going to take anything from today's presentation, I think it's going to be this, that hiring today isn't about specific spotting perfect answers. It's about finding people who can think clearly, adapt quickly, and use AI responsibly to solve problems. Why is this so important? I kind of crafted this message here very carefully because I believe that AI tools, the one that we have access to today, and the ones that are being developed right now and will have access in corporations in coming months and years, are going to fundamentally reshape how our day-to-day activities look like. And because of that, I believe that it is important to hire people who will be able to utilize their skills and ability to communicate and effectively work with those AI tools such that they can solve problems. I also use the word responsibly over here for a very specific reason. What we want to avoid doing is hire effectively a glorified copy-paste machine who will take our requests, simply copy-paste them to AI, let's say ChatGPT, and copy-paste the reply to me. I don't need a man in the middle between me and my AI. I want to be able to give work to my team, and I want them to think through how to get the results that are necessary to be coming out of the tasks that I have, and I need them to use the tools to do that. So that distinction of not just delegating the task to AI completely, it's in my opinion crucial. And we are starting to see that happening in corporations where People simply use AI to mass reply to emails without any thinking in a process. Where is this all really coming from? Aina and I already recorded 2 podcasts on the AI topic, but really this webinar came as a result of that podcast and um, a fairly viral message from Shopify CEO, who basically created a new mandate within Shopify saying that no new employees can be hired if AI can do the job. So now teams at Shopify need to justify increasing the headcount, and they have to prove that AI cannot perform um, that work. Then and only then they will be granted a new headcount on the team. So that's one of the reasons where is this coming from. The other reason is that we start to see more and more AI utilized during the entire cycle of hiring new employees, both at the application level, interview vision, and then right after they join during the onboarding. And that AI is very quickly started to be misused rather than to help. It is now, we see people use it to cheat. And that all of a sudden became a massive problem that it's actually quite hard to solve. So, how do candidates game the system? Really, there is a couple of ways. So, first of all, there are already tools out there that auto apply on job postings like on LinkedIn or other platforms. And the problem this creates is that whenever corporation opens a new position, often within 1 hour, they received between 300 to 500 applications. And that creates effectively denial of service attack, where you have so many applicants that you're not able to effectively sort through this. Some companies decided to then use AI tools to mass validate all of those resumes. And then people started to add coded messages in those resumes saying, skip everyone else, just hire me. And the arms race of AI on both sides continues. And this really creates a massive problem for corporations who seek very specific candidates. The more kind of niche role you're applying, you're posting, the harder the problem gets because you still have to sift through all of that noise, and it costs money. It's time of your employees that do this. It's licenses for the tools that you use to do that. So that noise effectively is cost that now you have to absorb in order to find good candidate. Another place in which we see quite a lot of misuse of AI is with resumes and cover letters. In preparation for this webinar, I interviewed some of my friends who are recruiters at major recruitment agencies here in Vancouver. And one of my friends said that almost half, if not more, of resumes and cover letters are now auto-generated. And I mean generated, not used AI to help write it. I mean AI generated it in full. And oddly enough, my friend who I was interviewing about it basically said, when I see a very specific template of resume, and in first 10 sentences I see specific keywords, I completely dismiss that resume because I know it's AI generated. And because it's AI generated, and recruiters are paid on um, employees or the candidates that they find that actually become employees, this is where they get their commission. They don't want to risk that someone is not who they say they are, and they might not have the skills that AI generated them. So they simply skip them. And that laziness that I named over here in auto-generating resumes and cover letters effectively backfires, right? But in an instance that it's also helping us, because if we can easily dismiss those, we're removing a lot of noise at the top of the recruitment funnel. I believe the only useful way forward is to really engage your network. I think the posting jobs on boards like LinkedIn, in my opinion, is slowly kind of dying a death of noise and attrition, because those jobs are posted, they're great, and there are certain legal requirements where you have to post jobs online to make it fair. But then that noise just doesn't allow you to find good candidates. I believe that it is actually cheaper and more effective to engage your network and ask for referrals. And it doesn't have to be only internal network. It doesn't have to be only employees within your company. I believe it's actually easier to go to your network, even on LinkedIn, and say that you are happily going to give a referral bonus to anyone who finds you a good candidate. And you would be surprised. Many people will write you messages, and $100, $500 referral fee or bonus, however you want to call it, will actually go a really long way. So that's the application stage. Yes, Aina.
Yes, Gerard, I just thought that I can add to this because people are coming to me all the time asking to refer them to Sun Life. And as you know, that Sun Life is a big organization. So even if in the hiring freeze, they still hire at least somebody. But I want to address to the candidates, don't just blindly go to everybody asking to refer you. Like, first of all, like 1/3 candidates who are coming to me to refer them appear that the job is either Sun Life States or Sun Life Asia, which I have no connections to. I have Sun Life Canada. And another thing, when people ask me to refer them, let's say to a project manager position or like to a business analyst, they send me just one generic resume, let's say for a Scrum Master. And I don't mind to refer a person, but send me a resume which directly applicable to the position you're applying. And I come back to people and ask them, could you send me the applicable resume? And they're kind of like getting into the defensive mode, saying, but it takes so much time to write the resume for every single position. And I can be a business analyst, I can be a project manager, I can be a Scrum Master. And I'm not doubting that. It's just if you're applying for a Scrum Master position, but sending a resume as a business analyst, nobody's going to review it. It's just the case. So this is a positive way of like using AI. Now you don't need to spend that much time writing and making sure that grammar is correct. So write the bullet points, write about your experience as a business analyst, and use your Scrum Master resume as an example and ask AI to help you. So you will raise your chances significantly of asking your network of doing the referral for you.
100%. And thank you for that comment, Aina. I believe this is a good use of AI where you're using it to help you tailor the resume towards the position you're applying for. However, again, I would just say don't use auto generation. Use AI to generate the content, then rewrite it the way you think it's applicable and use your own templates. If you go with what ChatGPT generates, you might get skipped at the first stage. I think we can move on to the next stage, which is the recruitment stage. And I think this is where we have the biggest opportunity to influence this entire process. I am in preparation for this webinar. I interviewed a few account managers at those agencies, at least the ones that we have here in Vancouver. And I asked them, how do you assess AI skills? And the answer was, we don't. No one has asked us to do so. And I said, well, but how do you know that, people who you're screening will have good AI skills? And again, the most common answer was, no one asked, so we don't do it. And I said, can you do it? And everyone said, absolutely. Give us a list of questions. Tell us how you want this screening to be done, and we're going to make it happen. And that was a very interesting realization that I had, because if we see that candidates already, some at least, cheat during the application process, when they use auto-generated resumes, when they say whatever the uh, whatever the recruiter needs to hear in order to get selected, um, the minute where agencies can screen more effectively for AI skills, this is where they can really filter out quite a lot of candidates. And why would you need those AI skills to begin with? I believe that AI tools are going to reshape our day-to-day so much that you really cannot afford not to do this. I believe with an average tenure of an intellectual employee, which is roughly 3.5 years, if you look at how much everything changed over the last 3 years, like if you look at it from that perspective, 3 years ago, ChatGPT was an experimental thing that some of highly technical people were using, and most of us in our day-to-day life didn't really bother. And now ChatGPT is almost, a tool that everyone uses on daily basis, whether that's ChatGPT, Copilot, or Gemini, or whatever other flavor you prefer. But all of us use AI almost daily, if not daily. Well, in 3 years, this is going to be even more amplified, and this entire process, the improvement process of AI is going so fast that I don't believe you cannot hire for what you need now. You should hire for what you need now and what you think you will need in the next 3 years. And the only way you will be able to do that is if you leverage AI skills for those employees. So you now have to evaluate their AI proficiency. But here's the problem. Normally, when we say proficiency in any given domain, we say, I need 5 years of experience in that space, because if you worked in some space for 5 years, you have sufficient level of experience. Well, like I said, ChatGPT is like 3.5 years old as a product, and most people really started using it last year. So asking for 5 years is kind of pointless. So if anything, what you should be doing is testing how people think, and actually ask them to show you how they use AI tools. So actually, I'm going to cover that in the next stage, during the interview stage, because this is where I think the biggest problem right now lies. I already had a friend of mine who's a technical lead experience this firsthand, where one of the candidates took their phone, glued it next to the webcam, and had ChatGPT listen to the interview and provide perfect answers. And when David started to go deeper and deeper into questions, the AI continued to generate very generic answers. And this is how he figured out, oh, this person is actually reading from a screen and they don't really understand what they're talking about. So it's already happening. This is no longer a fiction where people cheat during the actual interview, like, Zoom interview like this. We're already experiencing this today. And I think the best way to to counter that is to actually put a candidate in a position when they have to show how they use AI. And here, very specifically, my recommendation is to ask them to share the screen, open the tool of their choosing, whether that's ChatGPT, Copilot, Gemini, and even the free version is more than enough, and actually give them a few questions and a few problems to solve, and ask them to solve it in something that online people, folk refer to as a single shot prompt. I'm not going to go into prompt engineering too much over here, but effectively, single shot prompt is where someone describes the entire problem in a single prompt that is like 2 or 3 pages of text. And they specify all the requirements, all the constraints, examples, the role that the AI needs to take, and all the other elements of prompt engineering. What this does, in my opinion, it shows whether a candidate can think clearly and communicate clearly. You're evaluating whether they are capable of breaking down the problem and then communicate that problem in such way that then AI will be able to receive really specific guidelines on how to provide the solution to that problem. And by doing this as a single shot prompt instead of conversation prompt, you're actually evaluating the candidate, not the AI. Because we don't want to guide AI and eventually get there, because we're not hiring AI, we're hiring a person. So we want to figure out how they think. Yes, Naman.
There's a particular style, a methodology, let's call it, in software development that's called behavior-driven development, or BDD. You might hear terms like cucumber associated with it, or gherkin, but BDD, or behavior-driven development, is the main term to remember. And it sounds like this is now going along those lines of behavior-driven development, where we set up the context and then we set up the persona, and then we say, what do we want? And if we have expectations, then we specify those. But BDD works exactly by setting up the personas and the context, and then describing the actions that we wish to perform. So given, when, then are 3 commonly used words in BDD. So it looks like it's going down BDD style, the single shot prompting.
Very much so. I effectively model this advice on code challenges, because typical code challenge when we're hiring software developers is about how that developer thinks and how they bring problems. The code itself that they write is not necessarily that important. It's kind of important to understand if people know general good practices, sure, but it is not often the code that they write during the interview is often kind of useless. Sometimes it doesn't even work, but it doesn't matter. But to your point, Naman, 100%. I want to see how people think, and if they are capable of describing it and have good written communication skills that I can then evaluate in their prompts, then I know that they, 1, know how to break down the problem, 2, how to communicate it, and 3, use the tools effectively to then get the output from AI. I see the next hand raise, Aina.
Yes, Gerard, I just remembered we were talking during our podcast, and you shared this story about the recruiter who spotted a candidate on cheating, providing the AI listening to the conversation and providing the answers for them. After that, I actually experienced the opposite situation when a person interviewed me for her podcast. And I asked her about the questions, and she's like, let's improvise, because I'm using an AI tool. So I have my list of questions, but listening to you, AI will provide me the next question, which is the most suitable. So I might switch my questions to AI questions if I find that AI questions are more suitable to our conversations than what she prepared in advance. So I think maybe that is going to be something to think about for the recruiters. Not just spotting the candidate of reading the answers, but maybe use AI to help you to listen to the candidate and maybe choose the better question, like for like the next round of conversation.
Right. Lance, I see you have your hand up, and I will address that in just a second. I will just address what Aina said. 100%. I think the AI should be used during the entirety of the process, and both sides, in my opinion, should use it to enhance the conversation. But I want to underline the word enhance, not replace, right? I'm evaluating whether someone is capable of solving the problems that I will put in front of them. Today we're using ChatGPT, and it is in a written form that we're interacting with it. It's slowly moving into verbal communications because you can now press a button and speak to ChatGPT, and it will use the speech to text conversion, and you can interact with there. But who knows, maybe 2 years from now, there will be different interfaces. We're now seeing agentic AI taking place. We'll see even more advanced AI like Manus. I don't know if any of you played with it, where it can actually take over your entire browser and perform tasks as a human being would. I still want to hire someone competent. So I'm trying to evaluate the competency and them as an employee. And I want to avoid AI overshadow that because AI will generate better answers, right? Lance, you have a question.
I have a couple comments. One of them is, technical interviews where the recruiter maybe is not a programmer, doesn't really understand any depth about what he or she is interviewing for. And I bring myself up as a perfect example. I've used ChatGPT or Grok, and I throw somebody's resume in there or their LinkedIn profile. And I say, I'm interviewing this person. Give me the top 5 to 10 questions I should be asking them. And then it'll spit up something and I'll say, okay, that's great, but do a deep dive on the technical. Take these 3 questions and build me a more technical interview as if I am a developer myself. And so I get better questions. And I've done some of these interviews with different people, and some of them are stumped by the questions. Like, they're quite challenging. But if they'd ask me questions back, I can't answer them. You know what I mean? Because I don't know what I'm really interviewing. I'm just reading off the script. So I think in some fields, that's going to be a challenge where, I guess it's already been a challenge, but it allows somebody to have the confidence to jump into something they really don't know much depth about. That's one point. The second one I wanted to make was I did work at a video game studio many years ago, and they were building a game engine and very much C++ driven, object-oriented code. But they were looking for very sophisticated programmers. And so they built a test with 7 questions, 7 C++ questions. And they would have me send it out and just say, just collect it, see how long it takes them to finish it. And generally, the ones who are really sharp would have it back within an hour. They would scan it over, answer, or they'd say, I need to pull references for these. And we said, pull reference from wherever you want, but just make sure you credit where you're taking, if you grabbed it off GitHub or whatever, then reference it. But what we didn't tell them, there was 2 mistakes on the test. The number 3 and 7 were unsolvable, completely unsolvable. So the guys who knew their stuff immediately went, hey, either you have a typo or that was a trap, and I see 3 and 7. So what do you want me to do with those? Because I'm not spending any time on these. These are a waste of time. And the people who didn't know, this is where the filter was. They'd call me back and say, can I keep this overnight to work on this? 3 and 7 seem very tricky. And we'd say, take as much time as you want. Call us back next year. It was just kind of but it was the filter that really helped the hiring team and everyone involved it knocked out the pretenders. And so that's what I'm curious with, this discussion. We need to build, and to your point about competency is really what they were looking for. And I remember talking to one of the senior programming guys, and he said, Lance, programmers need to question other people's code. Don't take it verbatim as being perfect. Don't think that it's actually functioning properly. And he said, that's the kind of team I want to build here, where they're curious. And if there's a problem, they just don't verbatim imagine that the whole code base is accurate. Maybe it's in there.
Precisely.
So anyways, I just want to add that to the conversation, but thank you.
First of all, those are two very valid points. And I think this is where the test still stands. If you give those questions to AI, less sophisticated one will try to hallucinate and will provide an answer. And more sophisticated one will explain why the question is no longer, or it's not a valid question and might provide some other things. The problem is that it takes seconds. So it's no longer a question of how long it takes people. I take your whatever test you have in front of me, and AI will solve that test to the best its ability. And the more sophisticated models can spot those kind of problems now. We read all the time that AI passed the bar or passed the medical tests. And so the point I'm trying to get to here is I want to find people who think. I want people who are good at breaking down the problems. Because one thing that those AI tools are really good is just spitting content, and they just generate it. Whatever you say, the more specific you are and the more guidelines you provide in those tools, generally you get better results, right? This is where prompt engineering comes. The problem is when you're trying to have that conversation with AI, that conversation eventually can lead to good result, but sometimes can go on tangents, and sometimes AI gets stuck in a loop of wrong information because it has a prior context, so on and so forth. That's why I'm also recommending the single shot prompt, where I first evaluate someone's ability to break down the problem, then describe it. And if they're successful in providing the description, then the AI will generate an answer to whatever problem they're breaking down, and it's going to be much closer to what I would expect them. I think there is also another aspect to it where I want someone who is communicating this stuff very clearly. That's another aspect of working with AI, where the clarity of prompts leads to better results. And because I don't know what this person is going to be doing in my company 2 years from now, I want to find someone who I will be able to work with, who will learn new skills and then be able to clearly communicate with the AI to enhance them when they will be learning new skill or performing new duties. I think we can move on to the next part, which is kind of referring to what I was already saying. You're not hiring for today. You're really hiring for the future. But you don't know what the future holds. Like I said, 3 years from now, those tools might do all sorts of other things that today we think are impossible for AI to do. And I guess this is where clear vision, both for your company, for your team, and then how that vision trickles down to the kind of role I need to hire for, that clarity really is going to help. I don't think companies can afford anymore to just hire quote unquote executive assistant, a person that will kind of take care of all the little administrative tasks that we don't have time for. I think AI is going to take over and will effectively replace those kind of administrative chores that some employees do. I think AI is also going to make it such that any employee will have their own dedicated agent, and that agent is going to help them perform their duties. But the more specific we are in defining those duties, the better agents, AI agents, will be able to develop for them as an assistant, and then they will be able to perform their duties even better. So that's that. I think I can move to the next one. And I think the last major point that I want to make here is that I think the new major skill that we should be evaluating any employee, regardless of their position in the company and the duties they will be performing, I think the new thing that we need to start evaluating for is adaptability. When ChatGPT first started, it had a very small context window. And what we were doing is using ChatGPT as a glorified Google. It then grew in its capabilities to a point where now you can effectively upload an entire book and it will work with you on the content of that book, right? So from a very small, kind of more personalized Google experience to now having effectively a clone of ourselves who can do all sorts of intellectual work. And more so, I'm not a developer myself, but I recently had a situation where one of the developers on my team was implementing a task that I assigned to them. And I look at their implementation and it just didn't felt right. It just felt like they were doing something incorrect. But I couldn't quantify my feeling in any way. And I'm not a developer, so looking at the code wouldn't really help me. But I decided I'm going to test my feelings with, actually at work, I was using Copilot. I took the Jira ticket that I had and I uploaded it. I took the business specification and the technical specification that I had for the problem we were solving. I uploaded that as well. Then I took the code from the pull request and I uploaded that as well. And then I explained my concern to the model. And the model then returned and said, yes, there is a problem here. Ask your developer about this and that. I don't want to disclose the individual details, but effectively, AI helped me narrow down why I felt that there was a problem. And it helped me communicate my concern with the developer. After I did that, that person admitted that there was a problem, solved it, off we go. Why am I telling you this story? AI now helped me adapt to the situation. I now am in a position where 3 years ago, I couldn't do that. I would just say, hey, developer B or another developer, I don't trust this developer solution. Can you review it? But that created conflict. That would create extra work for another developer. It's effectively a wasteful approach. Now AI enhances my own ability to do more work that before I wasn't able to. And I think this is the skill that we have to look for in future workforce. How well are you adapting to to changing situation, and how will you use AI tools to get there? And one thing during the interview you can ask is when they write a simple prompt and they run it, they get a result, and the result is, let's say, 90% of what you were expecting. The very question of how would you adjust the prompt, that massive prompt, to get the results, and how and why do you think you didn't get the good results in the first place? Having someone explain this, in my opinion, is going to help us understand whether that person is capable of understanding the problem and then how to address that problem and how to adapt to solve it. So just something I want to share here. Another way to do this, to test this, is ask questions starting with what if. If I approach this problem this way, what do you think about this? Or if I give you those other constraints, what if you have to solve it without this tool, or any variant of that? Asking people how they solve the same problem with different constraints also shows whether they are flexible or not, or maybe not. Maybe they're not flexible and they will always default to, I need a tool, I need some help or something like this. So that's an advice I will leave you here. And a couple of closing thoughts. I think the future belongs really to those who will be able to judge how to judge soft skills in human beings. I think hard skills are going to be changing so fast and will be augmented by AI to the degree that, I don't think it will matter to the same point. I think being able to judge humans and how good of a employee they're going to be, what is going to be their work ethic, how truthful they are, do they have good integrity and those things. If we'll be able to do that, we'll find employees who be capable of addressing any problems in our company, regardless of the tools and the tasks that they will be using on a daily basis. And I believe the second thought I will leave you with is, as of now, I think we should start thinking about hiring for a role that is already augmented by AI. So not necessarily think about it from a perspective of, I'm looking for a developer, or I'm looking for a designer, or I'm looking for a marketing expert. I am looking for a developer who knows how to use AI to help them with the coding tasks. I'm looking for a designer who knows how to use generative AI to enhance their workloads. I'm looking for a marketer that knows how to use sentiment and agents and can write specific prompts to then generate content. That should be the way we should frame how we think about this. Aina, I see you have your hand up.
Yes, I have maybe a philosophical question, and not just for you, Gerard, but for the group, because we're having a small group. So you mentioned that it's easy to cheat during the interview by reading the AI comment. And recently I've been playing with creating my avatar. So, and it was quite successful. Just the point is that a few minutes later it started glitching. So right now you still can tell whether it's me or it's avatar, but it's already very easy to build because it takes just this part of my body, which is like pretty stable, no hands, no fingers, which I always have problem with, like static white background, my voice, my accent, even my grammar mistakes. So I think maybe a year or even like few months later, when the AI avatars will be improved. So it's going to be hard to tell if it's like a real person in front of you or is it avatar. So guys, do you think we will be moved back to the offices and maybe have more conversations in person rather than having the Zoom calls?
Well, I guess that's the easiest way to solve this problem. Have people come to your office, sit down in front of you, turn off Wi-Fi, put them in a room that has really poor reception. They cannot use their phone to provide any answers. But I don't believe that's going to be the case. I think the remote work and ability to find candidates across geographic locations is a value add to the degree that I think we'll have to adjust the recruitment processes, not ask people to join us in our office per se. To your point about a virtual avatar, I think this is where good in-depth question prepared prior to the interview will help evaluate that. I think at least right now, AI has a very big tendency to stay general. And the more in-depth question and follow-up questions you ask, the easier it is to spot whether someone is reading from those generated content or not. How is it going to look like in 3 years? I think time will tell. Lance, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was talking to a fellow on the other side of the world, Australia, New Zealand. He's working with a few universities that are building motion tracking for interviews. So to watch your eyes, do they go up, down, wherever they go? And, this science has been around for a long time. I don't think it's deadly accurate, but, there are theories that eyes down to the left apparently is a telling of a lie. And so he comes from the film industry where they're using motion tracking to build 3D avatars for film, for visual effects. But now he's looking at, can we do a visual body map on a person's face while they're talking to us, and then register where the eyes are, and so on. And during the interview, use AI to be constantly scanning that face. Like to me, it feels very science fiction, but this is what they're chasing and pursuing. Because he was asking me, how do you test for behavioral questions, and how do you understand when someone's not telling the truth? And and for me, I've been a recruiter for almost 25 years. If I find something sketchy or they don't ask my question, I sometimes point it out immediately. Hey, that's not what I asked for. Here's what I need. And if they dance around it again, I remember to come back 20 minutes later and rephrase it and go after it again. Like, no one's getting through me. This is not an interrogation, but it's an interrogation. You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to get my answer one way or the other, So anyways, I thought it was fascinating that he's driving a couple think tanks over on the other side of the world where they're studying this, and they're using tools from the film industry to try and build a new model. And to me, what's amazing was, 20 years ago, I was at a conference where there were two guys from DreamWorks Animation, and they did a whole 4-hour talk on eye movement. And so that when they're building an animated character, it's as lifelike as possible. And they gave examples like somebody on a horse running in front of you, and you're trying to hit them with a stone. Are your eyes following the rider and the horse? Or are you looking ahead to throw the stone ahead of the horse? So that, what a baseball player might do with a pitch. Or anyways, it was shocking to see like probably 300 people packed into a small auditorium watching them, because they were award-winning filmmakers, and they had kind of figured out this human mechanic and been able to replicate it digitally in cartoons. But I think these are kind of the intersections of some of these sciences now, because I get, I've had so many of my clients say, how do you know when someone's lying, or how do you do what you do, and how can you train us to do that? And when it was in person, I found it much easier, because
100%.
It's a gut check quite often, right? If you had 5 almost identical candidates, at the end, it becomes a human factor. Which one did we like? Which one did we trust?
100%.
And digitally, it's so hard to do that right now. They've
check
really
this
made
out.
it complicated for everybody.
I'm just going to move away from the camera. Can you spot my eyes now?
Yeah.
Right? I already caused that friction here, right? When I worked at Unity, I dealt a lot with facial animation over there, and it is actually extremely important to pay attention to eyes, but also to this part, upper part of your mouth. It turns out that this is what human beings perceive the most as an uncanny valley. You can have the best animation, and typically it is the jaw that moves down. So you have game characters that have the jaw moving up and down. But if the muscles or if the skin and other things don't move over here, and the eyes don't move in a natural way, we immediately spot that. And those are the hardest to animate, because people's eyes never stay still. We always move them. It's almost impossible for us to have them still.
One of the videos
Sorry,
go ahead. Pardon me. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, okay. So to Aina's point, I think this is where avatars, at least right now, still fail. It's fairly easy to spot those avatars on Instagram and other platforms where you know whether that was an automatically generated content or whether that was an actual human being. I do believe, though, that in 2 years this problem will be solved. So how are we going to counter that? I'm not sure. Naman, do you have any questions? We're about to close off the session, so I just want to give you opportunity to ask any.
My questions are along a slightly different line, and it's mostly to do with my frustration with hiring as a candidate and as a potential employee, and that's to do with again ATSs, so applicant tracking systems or softwares or services that recruiters already use and have been using. So they're already algorithm-driven softwares. They're already code. So whether they're AI or not doesn't matter in a way because it's already algorithm-driven. And AI is again algorithm-driven too. So both are softwares, right? So with the arrival of AI, what changes? They'll still be using applicant tracking systems.
Volume. Volume is what changes, and volume, in my opinion, is the main problem. In the past, when I was applying, I remember when I moved to Canada, when I met recruiters in Vancouver, I still met them in person, and the initial screening was done in person. I remember Procom had like an entire floor on Georgia Street where they only had like a tiny little offices, and there was a bunch of recruiters that were, bringing in people for like 20-minute interviews. That went away with Zoom and other tools of this kind. But the problem was that they always had that opportunity to kind of have that human touch. AI creates a situation where if you have 500 applicants to a position, you now have to use an AI tool to, reject 97% of them, right? But how you do it in an effective way such that you don't reject the talent that you want to hire, right? So I think the problem is volume and kind of the arms race of quality of those systems, because now you can actually go. There are tools that use AI to defeat ATS systems. Like there are online tools, you can Google them. There are resume generators to defeat ATS systems. And I think this is where really my advice from beginning of the presentation stands ground. If you request that your network recommends candidates, and they actually recommend specific people, right? If this is the way you build the top of the funnel, then it doesn't matter whether ATS is AI driven or not, because your top of the funnel is already candidates that you want because other people recommended them to you. And that reduces that volume. Then recruiters can assess them, right? And assess their AI skills, assess their general skills, assess them as potential employees, and they can reduce the funnel to, let's say, 8 candidates. Then you go into the interview and go from there. Does it make sense what I'm saying?
Yeah, some parts of it, a little bit. Don't know how much time we have to pursue the subject.
It's a very interesting question. I'm happy to address it outside of this webinar. We'll slowly have to close it off, so I'm just going to give you a couple of things to think through. AI can generate really kind of polished resumes and answers, but it cannot fake genuine understanding. We should evaluate people really how they think, how they structure solutions to problems, and how to communicate them. I believe that adaptability, like I said before, is the new core skill for which we should test potential candidates. And lastly, I think AI fluency is slowly becoming the new must-have bullet point on your resume. In the past, we used to say, oh, I know how to use Microsoft Word. Like that was 25 years ago. Then we said, I know how to, use, let's say, Jira or other tools because I'm proficient in them. I think now the first bullet point in your summary of skills on your resume should be, I'm proficient in AI, completed X amount of courses in prompt engineering or similar things. That should be the top bullet on your resume, because what you want to do is indicate to your future employer that you are adaptable and capable of using those tools to enhance your productivity, right? And I believe that is what we should start looking at, both as an employees applying and as a team leaders who hire. If that resume has that at the top, that means that the person who's applying has a good understanding of the workforce and the space today. And with that positive note, I would like to thank everyone for joining us. Happy to follow the conversation outside of this. Connect with me over LinkedIn or email, and I'll gladly engage in a further conversation. But for the time being, I think we all have other meetings and other things to attend to. So thank you very much for your time and for being here with us today.
Also, Eka and Gerard, thank you very much for joining us. And I'm also happy to continue the conversation outside of this webinar. So the link for this webinar and 2 previous recordings will be provided to you either today or tomorrow. And hope to see you again in our future webinars and podcasts related to AI.
Thanks,
Thank
everybody.
You guys.
Have a good day. Bye.